the ministry of the card, the ID card, the bread, and everything else. So that's where we left off. We were talking basically about what mutual ministry should be, and are we still doing it? So that was the question, and we didn't really get a chance to answer that question last time. But in review, I would simply remind you of 1 Corinthians 12, which talks about the church as the symbolic body of Christ, in which Christ is the head, and the arms and the legs and the body parts are us. And the church functions, but only with our input. So that's, I think, enough of a biblical basis for mutual ministry and the ministry of all baptized. And of course, everything we do in this church is related to the baptism that we all took part in. We renew our baptismal vows every single week when we go up to communion, and we cross ourselves with water. That's to remind us of our baptismal vows. And so our whole service is about mutual ministry, and even sometimes when we don't realize it or think about it. So today our challenge is to try to discuss what mutual ministry is and how it might affect us as we try to replace Jane in her role as priest next October, because obviously a priest is also a member of the church and should have a role as well. So how large should that role be? And that's where we fit in, because the things that we don't accomplish, is it because we cannot do them, or is it because we want a priest to do them? And that's the question I think we have to work on. So I'm asking us to review for a few minutes. What are some of the roles which we now carry out in our congregation here? And I've got these sort of divided up a little bit. In the service itself, for example, what are some of the things that we do that make us part of the ministry?
Well, I always bring up that the first thing we did when we formed mutual ministry was to set up a care team. That's been important, and Peg runs our care team. You and I have been on it, I don't know who else.
Okay.
It used to be such a big team that we split it out, like I do transportation because I don't cook. We're not that active anymore.
We're not so active anymore, but we do have a care team. That's right. How about all those roles in the service itself?
So you were like preaching.
We do the preaching.
Chalice ministry.
We do chalice. We do acolyting.
Readers.
Reading.
Healing.
Prayers of the people. Healing.
Just about anything that's
Just about everything, really,
Eucharist.
except for the actual blessing and the Eucharist itself. Almost everything else is taken care of by the whole congregation.
But don't other parishes do the same? And maybe they'll call it mutual ministry?
No, most parishes don't use lay preachers.
Not lay preachers, right?
Well, let's take a look at another area. Let's call it administration. Are there roles that we take in the administration of the church?
Well, you do a lot of it.
I do a newsletter. That's right.
Meeting, training new office staff.
Meeting and training new people. the service on the vestry. What other things do we do?
Well, vestry is not unique to us. Every church has vestry.
Well,
That's
Chris
true.
and the whole ministry sign up for stuff.
Uh-huh. Okay, we have that. Yeah, I'm not saying that we're the exclusive owners of mutual ministry. Of course we are not. But it is important to us, right? How about an outreach?
Maybe something that's different about us is we don't have a staff member who is in charge of outreach. We do it through the vestry or through church members who have volunteered to be a liaison with different agencies.
I thought that once John Harper said that it was the deacon, when we had just one deacon, who was maybe the person who often reached out to other organizations.
Because the deacon is the ordained minister to take the church to the world. So I would say that the thing about mutual ministry is not that lay people do certain tasks, but that those tasks are seen as ministry, not just.
Could you say that a little louder?
It's not about tasks.
My understanding of mutual ministry is not that lay people do certain tasks. Lots of churches have lay people do certain tasks. But in mutual ministry, those things are seen as ministry. And so,
Not just following orders.
yeah, not just following orders, not just getting a volunteer to do something, but is intentional and blessed and held up as the gift of every member.
That is really true. Because
Uh-huh.
I remember that it took me a year or two of coming to Newtown to realize that. I thought I was just doing a job. But it isn't that. And then I realized finally that my ministry extends to the community from time to time. And it all seemed more seamless than it ever seemed before in my life. So that was really quite. I think it's a wonderful concept. I do.
Yes, Polly.
Well, I think we do a lot of outreach that we care about individually. What really is kind of a trouble to me is that we don't have any outreach that we do all together. So to call it mutual, I mean, each person is acting independently and doing the things that they're most interested in. But it's been a long time, I think, since we've had a project together to help one of the nonprofits or something. And we used to do that, and it was kind of exhausting because it
Yeah.
did involve everybody, and everybody had to kind of spend some time and do some things. But I really don't feel we do anything particularly mutually. I mean, even so much as having a bake sale all together, which doesn't interest me very much. But I wish that we had some outreach projects that we did as a community.
Well, when the green team goes to clean up the highway, that usually
Yeah, I think
gets
that's true.
a big crowd of people.
Which we
dropped
discontinued.
We don't do that anymore.
And we just gave that up because the street that we had been assigned has been almost completely domesticated by urban housing, and the people who live in those houses take care of most of that themselves now. So we kind of quit that about last fall, I think. Last time was last year.
Yeah. Well, Mrs. Swain's on another team that does it. Her Iowa master naturalist do cleanup. That's where she is today, actually.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, I think we're just, victims isn't the right word, but victims of our success, because the food pantry, for instance, it gets to a certain point and then, all the effort that those original churches put in is successful. You get a director, it kind of gets professionalized. I'm on this board with an immigrant network, right? And, one of the things I've learned is you don't really want a whole bunch of people jumping in and doing things, because they just mess things up. you need to have, you know, the point person and someone in charge and someone who's authorized to, you know, take care of things. And everybody else who wants to do good can often not really mess things up. So how do we, so I think that's a good question though, that Polly has. How can we do an all-church kind of feeling as if we're all in on it together? And I don't have an answer, but.
Well, one of the projects I've tried to do is the gifts for the families at Christmas. So the whole church has an opportunity to do that. And there are many ways we can continue to support. I just was saying to somebody, I didn't know how many people were willing to buy gifts, so I made a conservative guess on how many people I took. They have 60 more families that need gifts. We can get much more involved in that. And I just wanted to do this a second year to see whether it was still something of interest. I would say that is a parish-wide outreach. The other,
Because I'm very new at this, but how do you determine what that is going to be? You know, who are you reaching out to? And
we're working with the organization Open Heartland.
okay, so that will be who you would.
They are asking,
They identify families for us to give gifts to.
Okay.
yeah. The other thing, we're going to have a great opportunity to do a whole parish outreach because we're going to need to become a sanctuary. I'm going to suggest we become a sanctuary church for what's coming.
I think so, a couple things we've done since I've been here that have been kind of whole church is when we had the baby shower for the Solovyovs,
Yeah.
that was something that really drew in a lot of people. I had no idea there would be so much buy-in and support for that, and the support that we've had for that family. But also with Inside Out, participating and helping put together the backpacks. And a year or so ago, we had an evening dinner for them, which we bought from Royce-Anne some comfort food, and then church members brought dishes, brought desserts, and we stayed to play games and sit at tables with the people there, and I really saw a lot of buy-in to that. We're going to have another dinner with them in March, and I'm looking forward to seeing that kind of coming together for that. And they have just moved and don't have that nice lawn anymore. So we may be planning to do that here. That will, like you say, could be exhausting, but maybe not, since Royce-Anne's going to do the cooking.
They're losing their space up on Clinton Street, is it? They had space in the ancient Hope Church that used to be,
Right,
First
the last,
Baptist, have
the
they lost
ancient,
that?
one ancient home,
yeah.
they're not there anymore. Now they're in what used to be a warehouse on South Capitol Street.
So,
Can I just say
From Open Heartland.
that maybe, I mean, I don't want to feel like it's a deficit that we don't have, you know, all together things, because I also think it's an advantage that people feel are empowered to, you know, bring their efforts into the church and ask the rest of us to join. I think that's, you know, rather than us all just all together deciding, it's individual members do feel comfortable saying, hey, let's help Inside Out or the immigrants or whatever it is. So I just don't want to see that as a negative.
Right.
I think you're touching on something rather valuable, and that is that organizations or groups of people often coalesce around one idea or one leader, and then they become effective as a group. So there's this constant dynamic between a larger group of people and some leadership that comes out of that group, or perhaps was the original inspiration of the group in some cases. So, for example, if Nancy is on the board of this immigrant network and something comes up, she will know about it and she will talk to us about it, and we will form a group to support her. And this is how the dynamics of groups like New Song work. The question is, can you institutionalize that, or is it simply just an organic thing that happens accidentally and chaotically?
Well, and to go back to what Polly was saying, and his point in our history, you know, this is probably the time where we need to look to people like William Barber. I mean, we really need to look to national organizations and movements and connect up with them to, you know, to have that kind of vision that we share and know how to follow. That it's really a movement and not us just, you know, kind of piecing together some good acts, some good works.
So in the case of New Song, we also have something called a liturgy team. And this is a group of people. It tends to have been mostly clergy, but also the director of music and some other people who have come together and done the so-called the long-term planning for New Song, like getting ready for Christmas and Advent and making sure everything is in place for Easter and some of the big events. And the small things like what wording are we going to use in a particular Sunday's hymns or in particular prayers on a particular day. And all that gets planned ahead of time. And it's been almost seamless because we're not on that team, but we all benefit from it, right? And we almost forget that they exist.
Now, I joined it for a while and I realized it was way over my head.
So, yeah.
I'm on that committee, and I feel that way. Okay, I know more about this seat.
But so there are these things going on in our church that we are sometimes only dimly aware of that make it run the way it does. So there's definitely leadership quietly in the background that seems to have a very positive effect. Jennifer, you're probably the only person of clergy who has any experience in this area, and I wondered if you have any observations that you'd like to make.
No, I was thinking a little bit more about some of the conversation I would hear with the outreach and thinking even liturgically. I mean, liturgy is the work of the people, which is what happens here. But I think being able to celebrate and lift up our prayerful efforts and our action in the world and things that we're doing, there's probably some ways that could be somehow incorporated in our worship a little more intentionally, so that as we gather, we're offering our prayer to this effort that's coming up. We're putting our prayer force behind what we're doing as well, and I think it gives that sense of what we all are accomplishing together more too. Yeah, I mean,
The announcements used to do that.
Right.
People would, and they still do.
well, and you do a good job of naming it, but I think even somehow in the worship itself.
Yeah, incorporating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do like, Nancy's notion too, that if you have everything in charge of something and nobody's responsible for anything, then when new needs in a community arise, it's more difficult to let them come to the surface.
Right.
And so I just think I think the way Nancy described it was, but when I first came here, there were people standing up, sometimes announcements were very long, because a lot of people were talking about what they were doing and needs through this organization. For a while, we worried about children in the community of Coralville, and we finally settled on Children to Children as a project that we could do together in a ad hoc committee. And I think that kind of thing is what keeps an organization
But I think the piece that mutual ministry is something that the church actively embraces, what that adds is kind of like Jennifer said, bringing it to worship and to sanctify it. To say, we embrace this, this is our core value, you're all doing things, some quietly, some not, some very visibly, we hold that up. And that emboldens other people to do things and to feel supported by the community.
Yeah, and then there's, very often there is a particular person or persons who become very involved in something, and then they reach out and invite others to join them, and then that becomes a larger effort. So it is rather an organic thing. But there are these two things in tension all the time, that of the group of people versus one or two people who take charge and lead that group a little bit further forward. And it's just the nature of the beast.
I think, I really see the strength in having a number of preachers and having a number of lay preachers. I think they bring new viewpoints and varying things that they're aware of that other people might not be aware of. It's really, to me, been significant that we have the variation in preachers that we have. Likewise, and I think that's one thing that's really unusual for our church. And also in prayers of the people, that we have a variety of people writing the prayers rather than depending on the liturgy that's written down, handed down by the church. And I think that makes us more unique too.
So this is a unique church in a lot of ways. It's been unique from the first day of its founding in some very important ways, I think, and that certainly is a part of it. But having said all that, let's change the direction a little bit and say, do you think there are ways in which the ministry of New Song has not been effective, needs more guidance, needs more leadership? Are there some things that are simply falling by the wayside?
You know, one thing I saw in the survey is the need for more of a feeling of community, or more of us. We're so outward directed, which is really great, that sometimes our ministry to each other is not as strong. And I think Lori's trying to address that with the one Wednesday night thing.
Nourishing our souls.
Nourishing our souls.
Yeah.
And the thing, you know, I've asked, so who sends the birthday cards? And that's not a big deal. Or who brings the food to people who are ill? And it's boiled down to just a very small number of people now. And a lot of us don't even know who does that, or how we could volunteer to start doing that. And hopefully time and talents, information from that will be really transparent once we get it out. We'll have point people that contact everybody who said they're interested in serving, and actually give them a chance to serve.
Are you asking for the things that have failed here?
No.
Yeah, are there things that you wish we did more of, or did it better, that we are not, roles we are not fulfilling that you think should be fulfilled?
Well, we mentioned youth, that we don't have youth here, but that's very hard to start. I mean, you need a critical mass. But we also have made efforts to reach out to the community around us. And I think that is how we got you, Melanie. You used to live in the neighborhood.
Yes.
I remember John Green did a pig roast here and, tried to get neighbors. And I know Chris Kellerman tries to get the neighbors when she does her Easter egg hunt every year. So it's not that we're not trying, but I guess because of the election, if nothing else, I'm just feeling a class difference between us and our neighbors.
I just have a focus question here. Is this one of our discussions kind of along with the discernment for our new priest? So, I mean, what's our goal here? Are we asking ourselves, do we want to continue mutual ministry? And, how does this relate to the search for our new priest, I guess, is what I'm asking. What does the discernment team need, want? Because talking about mutual ministry is all fine, but is there an end goal here?
There is.
Which is?
And I think the parish, when they filled out the survey, showed a pretty serious desire for more priest activity.
By pretty serious desire,
More priestly activity. There were several questions that were indicating to Meg that we wanted more leadership.
well, it seems to me that we need to address that question head on. I mean, what is it? I mean, we were just filling out predetermined survey questions.
And they went to a lot of churches that
Yeah.
were interested in a top-down kind of thing.
Right. So, I mean, we really need to look at that material specific to New Song and ask ourselves, well, what does that mean for us?
And Stephanie, you're familiar with the survey too and how it was drawn up. And wasn't there kind of a feeling when the results came back that they were asking how effective our priest was? And when we would respond, yes, this is an effective thing that our priest does, they interpreted that as, we're priest-centered.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily saying that we are priest-centered.
Right.
We were just saying what she does do, she does quite well.
Good point.
And I tried to say, probably failed, that I interpreted some of those questions, since they didn't ask them of the rest of the church, I kind of broadened it in my head. If the question was, does the priest manage to set up such and such? I said, okay, well, vestry is helping the priest, so the priest and all the vestry together are. And maybe I wasn't supposed to broaden it in my interpretation.
That's the
It
problem
isn't
with interpreting.
necessarily set up for our specific community. It was very broad for bigger churches instead of smaller ones. So in that respect, I felt a little bit uneasy with the questions and the way they were worded. And I think that's actually one of the problems with that, is because it was overly broad and not more specific to our way of doing things. Have I got that right, Jim? Is that what you're kind of thinking? I'm not sure that we could broadly say that we want a priest who does more leadership, more things for the community. We're never going to, all of us, agree on that,
Right.
but I don't think we can just make a blanket statement that.
Yeah, and I think a survey is a good place to start, and then we take it from there.
Yeah.
Look at what needs to be looked at. And I thought it was helpful for me to hear Meg last week kind of put it in the context of the diocese.
And I did listen.
Yeah, where we are. So that was interesting. I mean, kind of dispiriting in terms of the rest of the diocese, but
Yeah.
Well, so Catherine started off the conversation talking about the care ministry and all of its manifestations, which is transportation and food and just meeting up with people. And this sort of spills over into another broad area called pastoral care. And are we lacking that? Do we use it or need it? Pastoral care is something that John Harper mentioned, I talked to him a little bit about this issue, knowing that he probably wouldn't be here today. And he said there are some things that he would like to see more of. One of it is pastoral care. So I guess there's some sort of care program that a priest takes on and does in a specific way that we might not do.
So John was suggesting that he wanted more pastoral care coming from the priest.
He's wondering whether that is a shortfall.
Well, yeah, to me, that's what I think of when I think of that's what the care team should be doing. I mean, yes, transportation and cooking and stuff, those practical
Yeah, but
things.
what if you're on the brink, you know?
Listening
You're right between
counseling.
life and death. Do you just want food, or do you want
Are you come
a
talk to Laura?
If you're in a crisis, you might call the priest, but if you're kind of,
There are
it's not a
moments.
crisis, but, you know.
I mean, I think there is a definite role for someone who is an ordained priest or pastor to be with someone in an hour of need. And I don't think that has to be every day. It just would have to be maybe parishioner churches. I don't know, maybe.
So
Okay,
that
what do you
would,
think?
yeah,
Why
so
should we
in a
prevent?
traditional ministry model,
It's only, no, it's
The
not the
pa-
only. It would be.
in a traditional ministry model, pastoral care is the role of the priest or pastor.
Yeah.
And they offer pastoral care in a number of ways. In mutual ministry, that's one of the gifts of the body, the needs of the body, and the ministering to the body, the congregation, for pastoral issues
But the spirit.
is taken on by a team of people who have discerned that they have gifts to offer. And so those gifts might be cooking and transportation, but they might also be care of the soul.
Could be
Can I jump in
listening.
just for a minute, because I haven't been here for very long, but I left an Episcopal church in Arizona that was very effective, but it was larger than this, but it was full of all kinds of, everyone was inspired there. And the priest did pass out to different people, lay people, very lay people, and he ran that program, but it was for going out and just sitting with people, whoever, and the people could come and just put in a note that they'd like to talk to a priest. And I mean, I was one of those people that I remember. I went and he assigned someone to me who was just joining the church and was having a lot of problems with depression and things like that. And so I got her, and we are still talking now. And it was something, and he was the one, he didn't interfere or anything, but he knew some of the people who needed it, and he could push people towards them. And it didn't take really a lot of follow-up.
And there was something about you that either he knew or you knew about
Yes.
yourself that said, this is what I'm called to do. It's goodness.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, it's just amazing how, I mean, that was the best part of my day, was to go and talk to this person we had so much in common. And I wasn't, trying to treat her or make her any better, and neither was he. I just saw someone who needed someone anonymous to react.
So it sounds like your experience is almost the perfect marriage of the priest model and the mutual ministry model working together.
Yeah. Right. So one of the things I think that was on the survey, I don't know if it popped out for you all, but was I don't remember how it was worded, but something about the need for helping people in the congregation to discern those gifts. It's fine for all of us to sit here and say it needs to be done, or to ask for volunteers. But if you know about yourself, or someone else can see about you, that that you're called to do that, and then providing a way to do that. That's the model of mutual ministry for pastoral.
Yeah.
There's books to read and ways to support that.
Right.
Somebody who would meet with all of those people. Did you meet with him and all the other people who are doing things like you to
Yes.
sort of talk about and debrief? What are you seeing? What do you need? How can we support you in supporting that person?
Did you have special training or any kind of conversation or anything?
No, I didn't. Well, yes, I did. I shouldn't say that. Because initially, when I became a part of, and it didn't happen at the same time, but he knew his congregation really well. And so he could, kind of pull out things. But then once that happened, then there was a meeting, there was a group that met, that he led, and there was a program that you did, and talked about, and did that. And then there were, suggestions for, making connections with other people who were doing this. So if you had a problem with it, you might do that. So, but it didn't take much. It really took a big load off of his, which he needed to be doing other things with. But he was.
Sounds like a care team, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think when we needed the interpersonal relationships, Polly was part of that subcommittee because the care team got so big for a while that we did divide into transportation and food, and I forgot what they call your little piece, but it was to go and just be with people and talk to them and listen.
Yeah, I think that would really be a great thing to have. And just like with having lay preachers, and the lay preachers had, as I understand it, some type of training or information, some formation experience with preaching before they actually got to get up to the pulpit. That could be the same like with listeners. Because I remember when we were getting ready to do the gay pride booth, I suggested that maybe it would be good just to have a table of listeners and let people come and talk about their experiences. And Jane said to me that we don't have any trained listeners. And her response was, if you're asking someone to tell you personal things, you need to have some kind of, if not an inner, something that comes from inside you, at least some knowledge, well, a combination with that.
I do remember that Elizabeth Coulter and John Harper led a workshop for would-be or wannabe preachers. It was very fun. Jerry was there.
Can I just throw in one more thing, and then I promise I won't talk anymore. But the other thing I've noticed coming here, and I'm interacting somewhat with people who are younger in age than I am, and there is, and I've noticed it with my family and other people, with kids that are like maybe college age, or even, on both sides of those. They have a real interest in what church is about and what it is, and and they're getting together on their own because they want, in their forming groups. And I know there were some young people here for a while that were doing something, and I can't remember what it was. But it was.
Speak up a little bit more, because I forgot my hearing aids.
Yeah.
But they, I think that's, because and again, I interact with them, and they're much younger than I am, but there's stuff to be learned both ways, and they kind of like it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's again, making those connections.
Well, something you said before also is exactly or very close to what John Harper suggested in my short conversation with him. He mentioned that a very important role for the priest is one of training people for lay roles. It could be something as important as preaching, but it could also be something like preparing people for reaching out to individuals like your church in Arizona did. And that's something he does not know if it's going on right now or not. And then he also mentioned confirmation classes. Who is going to lead those if new members come? In the current situation, we only have a quarter-time priest. And so now it comes down to numbers, basically. And is New Song at the point where it would be better off with a priest who is here for more than just quarter time? Are there things the priest could be doing or getting people started in doing that isn't happening right now?
It depends on what you're willing to pay for.
That's what I said. It comes down to numbers now.
Right, and that's not how we started out, you know, because we were poor, I mean, we were small, you know?
Mhm.
So, I don't know what the answer is. When we talk about outreach, do we mean reaching out to the outside community? Or are we talking about reaching out to those of us who are part of this circle we call New Song? What are we discussing here? And if we're talking about reaching out to the larger community, there's no way you can meet all the needs in the community.
Mhm.
You know, we're housing poor in this community. We're food insecure in this community. You could go on with a long list.
Yeah.
And we can't do it all. So how can we use our individual lights and talent
Yeah.
to spread justice and God's love for each person that we meet? And this doesn't require a big committee with a leader. So I'm not sure how we see New Song collectively. I mean, we have probably different ideas. I mean, some of us prefer to just come for worship and go back home. Other people prefer to come and share in fellowship. Other people have musical talent they share. There's lots of different ways in which you contribute to the community. Sometimes you might want to call that mutual ministry.
Yeah.
I don't know, but you're right. Most every congregation, and I've lived in a number of them, have laity that are more active than others. Some prefer to come to worship and go back home.
Mhm. That's right.
Others come to share their gifts with the community, whatever those may be. So I'm not sure, again, what...
Well, we're trying to think about the way we have been doing church at New Song and deciding when it's time for searching for a new priest, that we know the kind of person that we want and also the kind of ways we want that person to fulfill the role. But when you start filling the role, then that person begins to share his or her talent with the other talents in the group, and they come together. And so understanding our role as mutual ministry congregation, whatever that means, and how a priest integrates into that group is the question that the discernment committee needs help on, and where everybody in the church could contribute something to.
Is it the second law of physics that inertia is forever or something like that? But I was just, while you're talking, I was thinking, you know, the last time we really went gung-ho on discernment was when it was time for Elizabeth to retire, and we were doing the mutual, ministry development teams and discerning everybody's talents all over the place. And I think we just, we did that. We got 3 priests out of it, and we've kind of been going along. And now it's time for a new priest. So it sounds like what we really want to do is some major discernment along with this this process. So we're not just looking for a new priest, we're looking for all those other ministry roles that we perform. But I guess I have no inclination to have a priest who's more than a quarter time, I guess, or a priest who's going to do more. And I think we do have the talent and the experience here to do our own training and discerning, and so that's my perspective.
Just to add on that, I would say part of the answer to what the committee is looking for, at least from me, is that I want a priest who recognizes the value of the gifts of the community and doesn't have the need to take those on themselves. And also, secondly, has talents in discerning and supporting other people's gifts. So can get out of the way when they see someone who has a passion or a ministry or a project and see the community as supporting that rather than gathering all the responsibility and role and power in the one person.
Are there roles that the priest could play outside of Sunday morning that would be useful and helpful for the church all the time? And I'm thinking possibly something like developing new membership programs, leading us in various kinds of activities that involve book readings or contemplations, things like that.
Whatever those are, I just want someone who's going to be recognizing everybody's gifts and getting out of the way.
Yes.
We have a history of everything starting grassroots around here.
Yeah, this church was founded basically by a priest and a deacon and a whole system of phone calling and so on. So that's the way it started, and it developed into something larger. John.
Maybe to follow,
I mean,
you want to say
Jerry.
something, Jerry?
Sitting back there and being from the very beginning of all of this, mutual ministry really came about when Elizabeth and Chuck, in full force, when Elizabeth and Chuck were in a god-awful car accident, almost killed them. Mm-hmm. And they were laid up for some time. We had John, we had Suzanne Watson Upting at the time that kind of filled in. That was really the inertia of mutual ministry. Mm-hmm. Sitting back there and listening to all this, there is some part of it that is a juxtaposition of very traditional church based around a head priest and the non-traditional, more mutual ministry of us defining our talents, ourselves, and bringing it forward. And I find that very fascinating from sitting back there, because there's a part of us that wants the very traditional person in charge. There's another part of us that says, no way do we want that. And I would guess we're probably more the non-traditional, not one priest in charge. Yes, there might be some benefit of having somebody with a little more time involved, but I don't think we can afford that, quite frankly. Even if we have a generous benefactor that would step up and say, I'll make up that difference for 5 years, I still don't think that's totally what we want or how that works.
And the question is, where can our limited resources be most effective?
And we're
Are
very,
we going to be, we're just paying somebody more money to spend more time here?
well, it's twofold, because we are aging out, we are burning out. That's been since day one of this congregation. And I think that's probably every church congregation out there today, So yeah, it would be nice to have somebody who could maybe keep us motivated or moving forward. But at the same time, in our current situation, for the size of our church, the size of our budget, we are very effective in how we maintain our funds and how we do our outreach with those funds. That was one part that I'm quite proud of. So I think the discernment committee needs to take into account that I think most of us still like to be a non-traditional organization. And I think to find growth amongst new people, it's going to have to continue to be even more non-traditional. That's my 2 cents. And if you can wrap it up, because I would like to go home and do some other things today, and I'll give you about another 5 or 10 minutes.
And we would all like to go home.
I want to go back to what Esther said way back in the beginning. Well, and several other things that I think we need to do. We want to continue the outreach that people are doing in small groups and individuals, but I also think it would be nice to have more getting to know each other and supporting each other, however that happens from a priest or from somebody else. I think we need to do more discerning or having ways to figure out how we could be helpful. I would like a priest or them to arrange for somebody else to do training on listening. Those are 3 of the things that I want to emphasize.
And I would say, instead of just looking for a model that already exists, the people at New Song, and that means you, are sitting down and kind of figuring it out for ourselves. And so we are actively involved right here in the process of growing and moving forward. So congratulations to you all on that. But we will have to deal with the question of the amount of time we are willing to pay for as we start looking for a priest. As you can imagine, applications will not come flowing in if all we're advertising for is a quarter time.
But we'll get the right person.
So that's part of the issue. And the resources that we have will...
We change our job description in order to attract somebody.
Our job description will emerge out of all of our congregational meetings that we're scheduled to have between now and January. This one will be one of them. So I thank you very much for your contributions, and we hope your prayers will be answered and that we will have a good plan as we move forward. So if there are no more
To be continued.
ideas or comments, I think we can say it was time to go home.
Thank you.
Okay.